Invernale. Thank you for having me again. I'm the CT Next. Well, I'm the FAST consultant for Connecticut, right? CT Next is the agency that had the award for this. The FAST program stands for Federal and State Technology, and it's aimed at helping underrepresented founders, women-owned, minority-owned, veteran-owned businesses. But it's also aimed in general, and the state is interested in general at increasing SBIR revenue into the state because it's a non-dilutive, one of the only non-dilutive federal funding mechanisms that there are. There are a handful of other mechanisms that we could talk about, but this is the main program that we offer help for. And so, right, CT Next, this is my email. The website is basically just a landing page right now as CT Next undergoes a pretty big transition this year into the DECD. So none of the other programs, except I think they got a tech talent bridge to run for the summer, and this are continuing along, and then the rest of it is going to be spun up and out again in more earnest. So we've sort of been on a pause for a lot of the things that we do, like SBIR workshops, webinars, a lot of in-person events and things like that, aimed at networking and education and just drawing folks out of the woodwork to say, hey, this exists and we can help you get the funding and you should know about it as a parallel mechanism. So we'll get back to that as best we can. So I've mentioned this before, right? Well, what is SBIR STTR? Well, they call it America's Seed Fund. That's not just the NSF, that's all of these. It stands for Small Business Innovative Research, or Small Business Tech Transfer Research. If it's an STTR, there's no difference between an SBIR and an STTR really, except for budgetary differences. I'll be talking about those in a bit, but for all intents and purposes, if I say SBIR, you can think STTR most of the time. There are very few agencies that don't do STTRs. We'll talk about that too. But so Small Business Innovative Research, as it says there, they want early stage R&D. The R is a key. The I, all the letters are key, right? You have to be a small business. You have to be doing innovative research, and you have to be doing research, meaning it's got to not already be a fully formed project or fully formed product, because what SBIR funds is an R&D. It's an R&D project with milestones, deliverables, generally aimed at getting you to an MVP, the minimum viable product. The program works across 12 different agencies, and STTR is more about working with universities and other research institutions when the bulk of what you're doing might be subcontracted out, and that's sort of a budgeting reason. It's non-dilutive federal funding, which means they don't take anything. The government doesn't take anything for giving this money. It's simply hard-fought money. Right? It is about a 10 to 20% win rate on average for these grants, and working with the consultants at CT Next and working through our programs, we tend to double your chances if you work with us. That's still not even money. It's hard fought. You might lose the first one even with our help. And I always encourage people to not be discouraged by that, to keep going back to the well. If you've ever done any academic funding, right, it's sort of the same thing, right? If you've applied for a grant from the NSF, just because you didn't get one doesn't mean you're going to give up on your whole career in academia, right? Well, it's sort of the same thing here. You get good feedback typically, but the three big things they're looking for, right, is some innovation, right? Product development and prototyping of that innovation, right? How are you going to take this patent or this platform technology or this idea and turn it into something useful to somebody, right? That actually brings a value add. And then do you actually have a strategy to sell it? You need to have some commercial potential for it. There needs to be, you have to be a for-profit small business in the United States and owned primarily by US citizens or permanent residents in order to be eligible. So, quote, small business is less than 500 employees. That's very simple. But you still have to have, even for a phase one, viable commercial strategy. You have to have some business model that makes sense for the thing that you're developing. So I jumped ahead a bit on eligibility, right? But you need to be a for-profit business located in the US. For CT Next's help, your headquarters has to be in Connecticut. You can be a Delaware corporation or, any other state corporation if you want. But as long your headquarters have to be in Connecticut, you have to be operating in Connecticut for the CT Next help, because it's subsidized help, right? These are state funds trying to spur sort of state innovation. And I skipped over what the seed fund meant a bit too, right? It's taking businesses like these, right? It's controlled by individuals, not owned by hedge funds and all these other things, right? Private citizens that are for profit and have fewer than 500 employees, right? We're trying to seed these companies to grow into big evergreen trees that are going to produce all kinds of tax revenue for them, right? So it's sort of like a VC fund, really, right? Which is, a lot of what seed funding is for, but for the government to hopefully benefit in the way of jobs and other development, things like that. Again, the differences in effort, right? If you're doing an SBIR, you can subcontract maybe up to 30% of that budget to somewhere else. If you're doing an STTR, that number can be up to 60%. 40% has to be spent by the business, but the rest of that money could be spent by anybody else. And so that is a helpful thing to have if you have an idea and a place to go, but you don't have a lab with an HPLC or something, or an NMR, or you need some huge piece of mechanical stress testing equipment, or right, you need to do something in a lab still to get you from point A to point B. And if you're working with a university, you're working at that level, an STTR is just a helpful mechanism to use more of those funds somewhere else. As a snapshot, right? These are the agencies, the 11 agencies that fund SBIR. At the bottom, those 5 do both STTR and SBIR. The HHS, Health and Human Services, includes NIH and a whole bunch of other subdivisions. NASA, the NSF, the Department of Energy, and the Department of Defense all do SBIR and STTR. And I think recently, I think this might be out of date, at least one other agency does STTR now. I think it changed since I made these slides. I want to say it's the USDA, but don't quote me on that right now. I'd have to go look it up. But they come in different ways, right? Grants or contracts. They have different types of things that they want to fund. So there are grants, SBIR grants, STTR grants. Those are broader topics. The NSF, the DOE, the USDA, right? Health and Human Services, DOC, education, all of those folks will do grants. They have broader topics. The NSF will have things like just, Internet of Things, or, drug delivery technology, or they'll have broad buckets of things that you can apply for. And as long as you have a great idea that fits into that bucket, you can apply. Versus contracts are trying to address specific needs. So there's a lot of solicitations, particularly the military, right? The DoD does these, a lot, right? They have a very specific problem that they want you to solve. And if you have any kind of solution to this problem or this problem set, depending on how they've written the thing, you're eligible to apply to that specific topic. And then some agencies offer both, give you the opportunity to do both. They put out very specific solicitations, and then they also have the broad categories that never really change, that are their big buckets of broad support. The money comes in phases. I mentioned phase 1 earlier, right? It's a 2-phase program. If you hear somebody talk about phase 0 help, things like the NSF I-Corps that UConn runs, people at the CCEI, or people at any of the other incubators, anybody who offers, quote, phase 0 help, including myself, is somebody who's just helping you before you've applied, right? It's giving you education. What are you going to do? Is this where you can apply? What agency? All those sorts of things. People will say phase 0. There's no money there. Funding, the actual phase 1 that you're going to apply for, typically is on the order of $250,000 as a limit. I think the NSF's now actual maximum is $256K. The NIH I've seen NIH phase 1s up to $600K, because some of them allow clinical trials, some of them don't. So some of them require just more budgets to do your phase 1. And so they often have a little bit more. But basically, think of about $250,000 for a project that could take from 6 months to a year. You have to budget at least 6 months. You can budget as long as 12, but no more than that. So basically that's the scope of that first project. And usually that's enough to get from, I have an idea, or maybe I have a proof of concept. I want to build a real viable prototype, and I need to do these few things to get there. And that's about how long it's going to take. That's what that phase one money is for. You have to win a phase one to get to a phase two. Phase twos are typically 1 to 2 million, and they're a 1 to 2 year project. Again, you got to budget at least a year. You can't take more than two. You have 1 to 2 years to budget out a scope of work that makes sense for you. And a phase two is all about scaling that technology, making it actually viable. Now they're weighting the technical risk and the technology of what you're doing 50-50 with your business plan, because they really want to see that you've got the right partners, manufacturers, customers, everything lined up. Because if they're going to spend $1 million on this, they really want it to go somewhere after that. Phase one typically is weighing about 80-20, your technology, your science, your project, your milestone against your business case. Because in phase one, you might be too early. You might learn things in phase one that make you have to pivot to somewhere else. And so the business plan has got to be a soft target in phase one. It has to be there. It's still part of the evaluation process, but it's not the be all end all. Really, do you have a really good project with milestones in phase one? And in phase two,
Excuse me.
they're doing the
I
other
have a
thing.
question. So you said it just has to be like mostly ideation and R&D. So do you
Correct.
need to bring like a pitch deck for this, basically?
You will have a 20-page proposal that you need to prepare for this money.
Okay.
So that'll include a technical section. It'll include a whole lot of things.
Okay. And then is it to a panel, to investors, to like a mixed crowd? How does it work?
It goes to a panel of experts in the field. So whatever you're applying for, they will have a group of people who are educated in that field. They will not necessarily be experts in your exact thing, but they will be an expert in the field. So if it's a medical diagnostic, or if it's a rocket propellant, or if it's a chemistry, a new drug, they will have people who are technically sound and able to do that. I think every now and then maybe they pull from VC firms or things like that. Mostly it's faculty, professors, other SBIR winners, but they all have a technical bent.
So sorry to break in, but
I
think we wanted to hold the questions until after the presentation, if that's okay.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah. Yeah, no worries.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. So then then they call phase three. Phase three is not actually a phase, right? It is a contract you can kind of get into with usually the government. So typically when people talk about phase three, they're talking about a deal that they've made with NASA, the Department of Energy, the DoD, the people that you have interacted with throughout phase two. And if the customer is the Air Force, let's say, right, phase three is usually, all right, well, you did phase two to scale it up so you could sell it. Phase three is sort of your pilot sales contract almost, right, with them. So people refer to phase three, but there is not a formal applicable for phase three. So I bring all of these up because people will talk different talks, and I just want you to understand the difference between 0, 1, 2, and 3. The other sort of differences here, and I don't know if I mentioned this. No, I don't mention this. So some agencies, the NIH being one of them, I believe the DoD recently made this possible. There are some agencies that allow you to do a combined phase one and phase two. The NIH does this, or a direct to phase two if you meet certain criteria. And the reason for that is sometimes you've developed something so far as a medical thing that you need phase two money because you need to do a full clinical trial. You need $1 million, $2 million to get the first, full clinical done on whatever animal model you're doing to get to the next stage. And there's no point in doing the phase one money because either the drug, the molecule, whatever, it's already identified. Right. So you can't quote develop the proof of concept if the proof of concept is already developed in that way. And it's very weird. Some of the DoD stuff falls into that category too. So they've allowed things like combined phase one, phase twos, direct to phase twos. Those are special cases. Most of the other agencies are straight up phase one, phase two. in terms of the funding gates. So I mentioned again, right, what are the things that they are looking at, right? They're going to look at your technical proposal, but they're also going to look at your team, right? They want a lot of small businesses, this team is still less than 10 people, right? It might be less than 5 people, right? You can get an SBIR with only a handful of, quote, people that are a part of the company, but your team is more than just the employees of the business or the people who are bootstrapping or the people who are actually being paid if you happen to have money to be paying somebody to be your CEO, right? You've got the team that is the company, but you also have your other experts. Who's on your board? Who are your advisors? Who are the people who are helping you out for free or maybe for equity right now? Who else do you know, right? Who are your contacts at wherever you're going to be doing the subcontracting work if you have to sub out any work? All of these people count, right? Your subcontractors, your actual employees, your technical folks, the principal investigator, the person who's going to be running the project, that has to be someone who's identified too. All these people need to be qualified to do what you say you're going to do, right? The better the team, the better the confidence the panel has that you can execute on the money that you've been given. And then obviously you have to be able to actually execute, right? So they want you to see that you have all of these other things sort of in place for management, right? And they want you to be able to do it. So do you have the right equipment identified? Do you have the right resources located? Do you have any lab testing that you need? Are you aware of the regulatory hurdles? Things like that, right? So, and there are things that you can apply for, like if you need lab space, but you won't have lab space until you have this money, but you know where you're going to go. For example, I know I'm going to go to this incubator somewhere in Bridgeport, right? If I want to work, I want to need this space. I'm not going to pay for it yet because I don't have the grant, but I know this guy, right? And I'm going to apply here and this will be my place. So that's what just-in-time resource acquisition is. That's acceptable too, right? The PI doesn't already have to be an employee. It can be someone you're going to hire that it's better if you already have the PI identified in their resume there, right? But they don't have to already be being paid by you. They just have to agree to be a part of your proposal. I'm like, yeah, I'll run this project. Here's my resume. I can do this for you if you get the money. And then they come on if and when you get the money. So that's, again, your just-in-time resources also apply to personnel. The principal investigator is very important though, right? This is the person that's going to execute on the milestones. And I hit that again, right? A good technical project's got a good, clear set of milestones and deliverables for this phase 1 money and for the phase 2 money. But if you're doing an SBIR, in both cases, SBIR or STTR, the small business is the applicant. The small business applies, and for an SBIR, the PI has to be employed by the small business at that time. So you have to hire somebody to be the PI, greater than half their time dedicated to the grant, if you get it. And they have to spend some amount of time on that project, right? It doesn't have to pay for 100% of their time, but they have to be working for the business in some capacity, and usually 10% if this is someone who's already on your team, right, and they're just managing this project among 10 other projects, right, okay, fine, 10% is fine. If you're a handful of people in a company, your PI is probably going to be your scientist. They may be paid maximum hours to be running the project for the duration of the project because it's your only thing and that's your baby, right? You're doing that. For an STTR, the PI can be at the subcontracting institution. So because for an STTR, up to 60% of that money is being spent somewhere else, except for the NSF. The NSF's the only one that doesn't allow this. Every other type of grant, every other agency that will let you name the PI to be a person at the subcontractor. So if you're going to the Jackson lab to do something and you need them to do 60% of your work, or you're going to a prototyper and Forge is going to be spending 60% of your money solving some problem for you, that's okay. A person that works at Forge can be the PI. The person that works at UConn, or the person that works at Bridgeport, or the person who works at wherever you're going, Yale, Jackson Labs, wherever you're subcontracting, the PI can be that person. So And so again, except for NSF grants, right? So that's one of the other benefits of an STTR is the budgeting and the requirements on who the PI is. And then this one I hit earlier and we'll hit it again here, right? There has to be a product, a project, and you have to actually be describing something. I cannot tell you how many proposals that I have reviewed that have this weird nebulous hand waving 10 to 15 pages of we're going to do something with this and we think it's great, and at the end there'll be some they don't describe or delineate what they're going to do. They don't lay out a scientific plan of any kind. They just sort of again wave their hands a little bit about we have this technology and we're going to do these things and we're just going to say words about them. That's not going to be good enough, right? That's going to be torn apart by a panel of experts who are like, well, what about this or what about this pitfall? You should be aware of your pitfalls, right? You should know I'm planning to do this. Here's the 5 things I want to do. Here's the 10 ways I'm going to fail. And here's the 15 reasons why I'm not going to fail, because I know how to answer all 10 of these things that I think I'm going to encounter, right? Nobody has a crystal ball. Nobody knows exactly what you're going to encounter or what sort of problems you might have, right? But the most glaring or the most obvious hurdles should also be identified as part of that proposal, right? You should be able to give them confidence, again, right, that you're going to be able to complete the work, that there is actually a project there that you're going to spend it on that has a, real deliverable attached to it, that it's not just vague and nebulous. Excuse me. So I mentioned this briefly, right? And I threw this up here just so you can see it, right? That's the NSF's list, Internet of Things. Like I said, that was one example, but all of those are their own broad bucket. The NIH has a similar list, but it's not quite as copy pastable as this, which is why the NSF one is my example list. But this gets at what I was talking about, right? If you have some AR, VR tech or some semiconductor tech or whatever it is and whatever it might do, if it fits into one of these buckets, you're eligible to apply. So that's really a brief overview, right, again, of that program, right? And what we have or what CT Next is able to do, what Connecticut is able to do and has been doing for a while is things like what I run, this consultant program, right? So I mentioned it earlier, right? But maybe not everybody was on the line. Doing networking events is one big thing, right? Our goal is to increase Connecticut's share of SBIR funding. Our goal is also to increase underrepresented businesses and underrepresented entrepreneurs, increase their presence here and their funding as well. And we do that through the funding from this program and a few other things. We have office hours at universities every month that I've sat on for a while. Those have paused. The marketing for those have paused while CT Next is reorganizing, but those will resume again. I have 7 different schools, each have a passive time where they can book time with me to have a very quick conversation. And then if we need to have more, we have more after that. Besides those office hours, there are educational webinars, workshops, all kinds of things that happen. I will have to edit this. The Fast Grant Writer program happened for just about a year. I don't think we're going to roll it forward. But that was something that was available for a brief period of time. It wasn't really well enough utilized to keep going, even though it is an interesting one. But the main thing that we do is the 20 hours of proposal development and review that is subsidized here, right? So we have phase 0 help, right? I talk a lot and I'm always available for talking, anytime we can consult on different things. I have resources that I can share outside of SBIR generally. But we offer 20 hours through our consultants, BBC, and they're not here, right? So it's not on a bullet there. We work with another consultant, BBC, et cetera. BBC, et cetera, used to stand for something, bio something, consultants. They got rid of what it stood for. Now it's BBC, Entrepreneurial Training and Consulting. We work with them generally, right? You talk with me, I figure out if you're eligible, does this make sense? What are you looking for? And if you're going to be working on an SBIR, STTR, we pass you to them. They have experts at all the agencies. My background, I didn't even really talk about my background. I have a PhD in chemistry. I've won NSF SBIRs. I've applied for more than that, but I only ever won an NSF one. And right, I've spent a different amount of time in tech and the supplement industry doing technology licensing. A lot of different sort of strange backgrounds, right? But I know enough to be dangerous, but I'm not an expert. I'm not a rocket scientist, and I'm definitely not a biologist. So we work with, the reason we work with BBC, et cetera, is that they do have experts in every agency at every place that you go. So whatever bucket you fall in, they have somebody who can navigate the little nuances of the NIH versus the Department of Education versus the USDA in terms of what your approach is and what the proposal is. 20 hours of time is paid for by us per company per year towards these grants, and that is in addition to, I believe we also have post awards. So if you win something, there's a certain amount that can be allocated to post award services. And let's see, what else was part of that? I think it's just that, right? The 20 hours per company per year with a little bit of post award. I throw these up here even though they're not even clickable, but I do have and will share again and can share a bunch of resources that I've collected across the state. So this is something I can send to Doug. I mean, and he can sort of share with y'all the updated list of links, but there are a lot of other resources throughout the state for funding and for other types of networking. And then there's also resources on, well, how do you register? And the fact that the folks in Connecticut that work for Apex are great. They will help you register your business for any and all things that you will need. SBIR, they can help look at your business plan. So can the SBDC. Depending on the sector you're working in, there's people I can introduce you to and other networking agencies, other accelerators. So yeah, it benefits sort of to talk to me. You can get this list individually. I can share it with Doug, but there's lots of things out there in the state. And that 10K program that was mentioned earlier, I think somewhere in here, but there's been a few different 10K programs. There's been some that were just for women, some that were run for medical, specifically medical stuff. So, just as a little throwback here at the end, right? You probably recognize at least one name on this, if not multiple names on this. And all of these companies at one time or another had SBIR funding. Because one thing to know is even if you're not a brand new, fresh out of the dirt startup, right? Then less than 500 employees is still pretty big, right? If I had a 400 person company and I'm doing R&D, that's still a lot, right? And if you get to a company of that size, or even, it doesn't have to be that size, right? You can use this mechanism to fund additional ideas and projects that maybe aren't in your budget, right? If you spend the time to apply for these funds, you have enough money to work on plan A and plan B, or, tier 1, tier 2, but what about your tier 3 ideas? Or what about, and at some point you have bandwidth to look at other stuff, but you might not have money. And this is one of the ways to get money for that too, right? As you grow, you can still get SBIR for quite a long time, right? As long as you're actually developing a new product and you're actually bringing these products to market, right? They don't want you to be a mill. They don't want you to just keep getting R&D funding and going nowhere with it. But as long as you're doing R&D and there's a viable path to market, then they will fund you, and you can be a serially funded company as long as you're bringing stuff to market. That's really it, right? I threw my email there again at the end, the website, but basically, I know that's a lot, and now I'm happy to sort of go into detail on anything that jumped out at you. Obviously, there's a lot more that we could talk about, but up to you to how to use the time. And thank you.
Well, I thank you very much for the presentation, Michael. I think we should open the floor to questions. Are there any questions in the audience?
This is Joe Goldberg, and I do know that there are some companies around that have been trying to use the SBIR for, as you mentioned, projects that they don't have money or they're not at the top of the hit list, but have some potential. But there was a change in the tax law recently that made it less likely for them to be wanting to do that. Can you give us some details about how that changed?
I'm sorry, say that again. I was.
I think it was that if a company spent money on R&D, they got a tax credit for
Oh,
it.
the tax changes. Yes. Yeah. Okay. So, yes, it used to be, I believe it used to be that you could claim 100% of any R&D income that same year if you spent it that year. What they changed it to is that you have to amortize that money over the next 5 years. So if you got a $250,000 proposal, you could only claim a fifth of it. You can only claim 50K in the first year, 50 the next year, 50, 50, 50, so on thereafter. I don't know why they did that. Nobody likes it. Everybody hates it. But they did it, and that's the way it is right now, unfortunately.
Okay, and the money you get through the SBIR can be considered income that way.
Unfortunately, yeah. But so here's a couple other, so there are other things, right? So if you're spending, there's some things that it will not pay for, right? Mostly the SBIR will pay for salary, but it will pay for overhead, right? A lot of the things it pays for, even though it's income, it's going to be spent on rent and personnel and payroll taxes and all of those things. It can't be spent on marketing. It can't be spent on intellectual property. Unless you select a tiny bit. Phase 1, you can get 5 to 6K, and in phase 2, you can get about 50K for what they call TABA, TABA, technical and business assistance. And that can be used for marketing or intellectual property costs and maintaining patents. You can also claim 7% as profit on the grant. So on a $250,000 grant, that's something like 17K that you can claim and spend on anything that you want. But again, however you claim it or however it comes in to your books, right? The amount that's spent on R&D that credit has to be amortized. So the amount spent on R&D might be less. It might only be personnel and materials. The rest of it might be the TABA, the profit, and overhead. If you're subcontracting, pretty much all of that subcontract is the thing.
Yeah. Thank you.
Are there any other questions?
To piggyback off that question, you mentioned something about the grant doesn't apply to intellectual property. Can you expand on that? Like, does that mean it
can't be
use
spent on
towards
patent?
the provisional?
No, it does not cover that cost. Your profit could, but otherwise, no.
Okay, thank you.
Well, I've got a basic question. Do you know how many companies get more than one SBIR grant?
I mean, you can, SBIR.gov publishes all the winners, so you could go take a look yourself if you really wanted the numbers. I can say several, right? I mean, if you win and you're successful, odds are you can get another one, right? And certainly if you're a phase 1 winner and you do good in phase 1, you'll get a phase 2. So you'd win twice, you'd be winning phase 1, phase 2. Typically a small company only needs a handful of these to get out of wherever they are, right? If you've gotten somewhere with it and you move on, you might grow faster than you need to, or you might survive long enough that on the one product that you've developed that you're not doing R&D into any others, right? It really depends on the business that you're in and the tech you started with, right? If you started with a tech that has 100 different applications, you're going to probably be applying for multiple SBIRs, right? Trying to carve out more and more niches in this patent you own. But if your idea is already narrowed a bit, right? If you only have one or two iterations or variations of this thing that you're building, or it's a piece of software that's going to be iteratively improved over time, but really once it's built, then you don't need another, you won't be eligible for / won't need another SBIR, if that makes sense. So yeah, they don't ding you for being a repeat applicant, right? They only dinged companies for being truly SBIR mills, right? Just getting the money to pay people's salaries, to do R&D and projects that never went anywhere, and they never had any intention to really commercialize the technology, right? It was aimed at bad actors. It's not aimed at penalizing people who have real ideas and are really trying to push stuff to market.
Yeah, in my experience as an SBIR panelist, I've seen several companies who could only be described as beltway bandits. They just keep going back, and that was their job, just to keep applying for more and more SBIR grants. I just wondered how many of those guys are there. It seemed like there were a bunch. And it doesn't sound like you know.
I mean, there's no way to, over time, how do you want to ask? Like, that question requires so much more specificity. Of all time, how many have won more than once? That's a huge data project. In Connecticut, in the past year, in one agency, you can go look it up if you want to be very specific. SBIR.gov does publish every winner. But to get that spread, they only export 1,000 at a time per Excel sheet. So I can't give you a number.
Yeah, and taxpayer dollars at work. Well, very good. It looks like Jason has a question.
Yes, thank you. Joseph, could you kind of elaborate about your question about the tax credit for R&D? Isn't that the tax credit only apply to the profit the company made that year, right?
I don't do the budgets. I'm not a tax expert. I don't know any more than what I said about the tax credit. I'm a scientist. I'm sorry. I honestly don't. They changed the rules. Talk to an accountant. I cannot. I don't know. I don't know if it only applies to the profit. I don't know exactly how all of that is spent. I think it also depends on the type of business you are, right? Whether you're which type of, if you're an LLC, if you're a partnership, if you're a CS or P, all of it's slightly different.
And I guess I would add, I'm reluctant to answer your question because I'm not as knowledgeable as to give you a firm answer as I should be. But the impression I've had, and it frankly comes from these companies that Doug mentioned, whose business is to try to get SBIRs, is for those companies, the SBIR amount they got was their income. And so they got a tax credit for that amount because it was research work. And that changed for them, and it changed their outlooks. Now, all the details on how that is done is why I was asking the question.
Yes, thank you.
Mr. Lyons, can I pose a question?
Yeah, please do.
Again, hi, this is Yusuf Rashid Delane. What is someone who has original patent on an invention and is just trying to get up and running, but are there any programs that can help the inventor get a non-provisional patent before applying for SBIR?
There's a Yukon patent clinic which will help inventors for free if they accept you. And at that point, you will work with a student who is supervised by a patent professor. I've actually gone through this process myself, and I must tell you that it was extraordinarily painful and long. And after 4 office actions, I lost the patent. But that's just my experience, and I think your mileage may vary.
Doug, is Patent Yourself, are they still writing that book? Is that still
Yeah,
being...
there's Dave Pressman's Patent It Yourself, but if you're looking for professional help, from a program within Connecticut, the Yukon Patent Clinic is probably a place you can look at. They also help with trademarks.
Oh, okay. Because I read Patent It Yourself, and I wrote provisional patent applications from that, and then I'd have a lawyer, a patent attorney would take over from the provisional when it was time to file the regular, and then you could write the claims and the important stuff.
Yeah,
And,
yep, I've done the same thing. That's a good way to go.
And that saved me some money, because then the patent attorney would charge about half as much, because I had a lot of the patent already written.
Well, the issue is the funding for the non-provisional patent. I'm getting an estimated cost of $3,500 to $5,000, depending on the nature of the invention. But my question is, does the Yukon Patent Clinic aid in the funding process?
No, you will still maintain your micro entity status, and even though they're helping you, but you still must pay all of your filing fees. So
Okay.
office actions, separations of claims, filing and maintenance, all of those fees at the micro entity level will still be yours to pay.
Typically, the only way to get money like that at that stage is to do pitch competitions. Either that or you're finding other loans. Maybe there's other programs, but no one's just gonna give you $5,000. You have to either win it somehow, or you will fund it out of pocket, or other investors, right? Even an angel investor isn't gonna look at that stage and give it that.
It's ironic because the state and the government are so readily excited about innovative ideas, yet it seems contradictory. I mean, because someone might have great ideas, but don't have the funding to protect the idea before it gets converted into a prototype and then eventually to marketplace.
Well, like I said, there are loans, there are pitch competitions, and then there's out of pocket, right? You can write the patent and file it yourself. For a cover sheet costs $120, right? You could protect your idea kind of for a year with a pretty simple low cost filing. And then if in that year you haven't drummed up the 5K you need to actually convert to a robust patent, then sorry, right? I mean, that's you have to do that part, right? That's part of the entrepreneurship, finding that money. But an R&D project, like I said, it is ideal to have the patent filed before you pitch to SBIR, right? It's better for you to have it already filed, but it's also, like I said, out of profit on a 250K grant would be enough to cover in arrears a provisional and a non-provisional filing. So there's other ways of doing it, right? I mean, if you find a lawyer that wants to have a piece of your company, like, hey, would you write my patent for 5% of the company? Then there you might get free work that way. Right? But otherwise, it's sweat equity and blood, sweat, and tears. I don't know. It's not a fun journey sometimes. Sorry, Mike.
Get the book Patent It Yourself by David Pressman. It's a very good book. If you read that book, you could probably write the patent yourself. File the provisional.
Can I write a non-provisional?
You could write a provisional patent that's the first stage, and then you have a year to file the regular. Also, once you file the provisional, you can try and sell it. Now you could try and introduce your idea to someone else. It's protected because the patent has been filed. And then if it looks like it's going to be something successful, if it looks like investors are interested, then you have up to a year when you could hire a lawyer and, file a full patent.
Yeah,
that's the advantage of doing a provisional first.
Yeah, thank you. I've already completed those stages. Thank you.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I think we might be getting a little bit off track in terms of the SBIR thing. One thing I know about SBIR is they really don't like to fund patent applications and lawyer fees. That's just one of those things.
Yeah, that can't be a line item, right? Like I said, it can come out of profit that is claimed because that's not specified.
We do
but
run business plan competitions at the Entrepreneurship Foundation, but we have not received any funding from the state for the last 3 years. Which brings me to my question. Michael, you mentioned CT Next reorganization.
Mhm.
Do you know where that stands and how likely that Phoenix might look when it reemerges?
In terms of anything beyond this program, I have no visibility. I know that we've reapplied for the FAST grant, right? That came out and was due. Cheapers, I don't remember when it was due. Was it due on the 10th? It was due at some point in June, right? We put it in. It might have been the 20th. It might have been Thursday of last week, and it just feels like an eternity since then, because of all the things we had to do to get it into and under the wire. But yeah, it is intended at a minimum, right? Because we're applying for the NOFO for this. We should know in September, and we've got a little bit of a bridge for me and these services to keep going until then. But it's been relatively light, right? For now, just while we're waiting.
Well,
But the goal is to bring
for
most of the programs should come back. And if we get the NOFO, right, if we get the award, which there's really no reason we shouldn't. It was just a full recompete this year instead of a continuation. We've had it for the past 5 years, and we should get it again. And this year it comes with even more money. They actually upped the cap. But that also, and we're good enough. We came up in terms of the rankings of SBIR. We're 16th as a state. Connecticut is 16th out of 50.
Good for you.
So pretty good for us, right? But that also means now the government has to match the full 100%. So whatever we get from them, we're not matching it at 3/4 anymore. We're matching full. So there'll be a little bit more money to do more stuff, and we're hoping to do more physical in-person stuff. That's usually the most impactful because it will draw out folks who can't or don't attend webinars, right? And it lets you bump into somebody and get somewhere. Plus it encourages the sharing of resources, right? Somebody knows about a pitch competition, somebody knows about another incubator, somebody has this, an expert maybe you want to put on your board, right? Doing that kind of stuff is much easier at a networking event.
Right. Good. Hope we get back to that.
Yeah, same here, Mike. I'm right there with you. I've been trying to keep this, at least we've kept this going. And I think we did the tech talent bridge. It will come back, right? Dan O'Keefe is doing it right now. This stuff is still living in the CT Next world, but that's just from a budgeting standpoint. The SBDC is involved as well. And they also have a lot of good resources. So like I said, I'm going to send to Doug that list because that list is ever evolving. So I'm gonna send the resources list that has the other stuff in Connecticut, and some of it is those things we were talking about. Some of those pitch competitions, some of those loans, some of the other funding mechanisms. And you'll have my email, right? So I encourage people to just reach out, right? If you have a question on any of this stuff, I'm always happy to talk about it and see how we can help.
And Michael, would you be able to send me the slide deck so I can post it on the website?
Yes.
That's terrific. I think everybody might appreciate that. I had a few contacts prior to the presentation saying that they regretted not being able to attend here on Zoom, but they were going to watch the recording. So I think having the slide deck for them will be very helpful. And of course, I'll point people back to you if they have any questions.
Excellent. Thank you, Doug.
Well, thank you very much for the presentation. I hope everyone will join me in thanking Michael for the presentation. And for next presentation, we're going to have John Runke do a presentation on his new hydronic company and the systems involved. And John's going to be sending me an abstract if he hasn't already, and I'll be posting that on the website.
Yes, it's a formula I developed so you can measure the overall efficiency of one house versus another, and database and whole plan. And
look forward
I did send you the abstract.
You sent it to me already?
Yes.
Very cool. So the next presentation is scheduled for the 30th of July, and it is going to be at 5 p.m. on Zoom, and I'll have all of that information up on the website as soon as I get a chance to review the presentation, formulate a website, and clear it with John. So thanks again, everybody, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you. Thanks,
Thank
Michael.
you.
Thank you so
Evening,
much,
everyone.
Michael.
Stay
Thank
cool.
you for your time.
You're welcome, everybody. Take care. Thanks.
Great to meet
Thank you,
everyone.
Jason.
Thank you,
Michael.
everybody. Have a good
Thank
night.
you.
Good night.